when it gets right down to it, we all want that little edge. We all want that little secret. No matter if it's weight loss, speed and agility training, strength, vertical leap. We all just want that one little push, that one little benefit, that one little edge to make all the difference in our success. When it comes right down to it, that edge is all in the hips. Today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Williamson, president of Personal Edge Fitness. Thank you so much for joining me today on my 99th podcast. Pretty excited about that. We have the big 100 coming up next week, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you have any questions concerning health, fitness, or wellness, especially all the myths that are out there about health, fitness, and wellness, please feel free to reach out to us. I always like to give you our contact information. You can reach me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. You can also reach us on our website at personaledgefitness.com and our Facebook page, which is Personal Edge Fitness. Feel free to give us a call if you'd like to speak to one of our trainers in person at 251-341-0927 or at our Eastern Shore location at 251-651-0927. You know, I don't know of any client, including myself, who's not looking for some sort of an edge in their training. When I compete for Team USA, I'm going for either national championships or one of the ITU World Championships. I'm obviously looking for that edge in my training. I'm looking for that little bit more that another athlete has. And I have that pretty well across the board. As you know, where our youngest client's 4 years old, our most senior client is 92, our median age is 39, and 35% of our clientele is over the age of 65. We train pretty much every demographic, every level, and especially age or athletes or weight loss, fitness, doesn't matter what it is. We do all of it, and I can't say I know of a single person that doesn't want some sort of an edge. And we call that a competitive edge, and for our athletes, of course, that makes sense. But even our weight loss participants, they're looking for that competitive edge. They're looking for that little difference. And I've got to say, when it boils down to training, I don't know of a secret weapon any better than working on the hips. Now, this is something I've spoken about. I've spoken about it in the podcast that I did on mobility. And I've spoken about it a lot when I've talked about age and the way we think that we degenerate because time passes on a calendar, which is an absolute lie. And we attribute a lot of that to the weakening of our hips. And that doesn't happen because of time. It actually happens because of neglect. But what we see in typical training situations, only, the last I saw, now I'm sure hopefully this number's changed, but only 1/10 of 1% of America works out regularly. But in the majority of those training programs, every movement is forward and backward. Every movement is typically involving quadriceps. It's involving maybe some glute movement as far as the legs are concerned, but there's not a whole lot of serious hip engagement, which is why we see problems not only in our senior clients as far as hips are concerned, but we see it in a lot of our athletes. We see a lot of hip immobility, which causes a lack of speed, a lack of vertical leap, a lack of first step quickness, a lack of lengthening of stride. I can go on and on. I mean, their entire performance is inhibited because of the lack of just some simple hip work. And I want to go over a little bit of that today and tell you a few different ways to attack the hip. Now, I could go through every single muscle involved with it, but I think that would bore all of you to tears, and especially me. I get really bored talking about muscles and their insertion, their origin points, and what have you. And if you're really interested in any of that information, please feel free to call us at Personalized Fitness, set up an appointment. We'll be glad to go over that ad nauseum. But for this podcast, and really get something out of it, I'm going to focus on basically the functions of the hip muscles. And the functions are flexion, which is moving the leg forward and upward. Extension, which is basically the reverse of flexion. It's moving the leg down and backward. Abduction, now it's spelled A as in apple, B as in boy, D as in dog. Abduction, which is the moving the leg out to the side, kicking your leg out to the side. And then add, or ADD, apple, dog, dog. ADD duction is moving the leg in from the side. And by the way, those last two, because I'm sure you're probably familiar with abduction machines and adduction machines. If you want to know the difference, make it real simple. ADD, A, apple, dog. You're adding something to your body. So basically, you're bringing the leg in. That's the easiest way to remember the difference between those two, by the way. A little quick side note. But that's what we're looking at. We're looking at flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction, which is what your hip muscles do. Now, the hip muscles, let me throw some out there to highly impress you. Of course, the big daddy of them all, I think, is the iliopsoas group, and that is the leg that what we also typically refer to as the hip flexor. I spent a lot of time on that. We're going to spend a little bit of time on that particular muscle today, and it does control flexion. We've got the tensor fascia. We've got the adductors. We've got the abductors. I can go on for days here and bore you to tears with the different muscles. But what we want to talk about is the motions of those muscles and exactly what they do. Now, if you think about something simple, something athletic, something most of us understand, that is running. You want to get better at running, whether it's distance, being explosive and sprinting and what have you. And you're developing those quadriceps, which actually fire that leg forward, extend that leg out and grab the earth. And once you hit the earth, you're going to dig in with your hamstrings, you're going to dig in with your glutes, and you're going to pull that leg through. Well, what controls that knee drive coming up is that iliopsoas, that hip flexor. If you're able to bring that knee up faster, well, you're going to be faster. If you're able to bring it up repetitively and that muscle doesn't get tired, in other words, you've got a strong hip flexor, well then, endurance-wise, your legs aren't going to get quote-unquote heavy. Also, if you're doing any kind of lateral push, think about it going around a curve of a track. Think about turning a corner. You're doing somewhat of a lateral push. If you're in an athletic situation, you're running on a soccer field, or you're running on a basketball court or whatever, you're going to cut sideways. Well then, that's when those adductors and abductors come into play. Your hips are, I was about to say your hips are all around you. Well, that's pretty much it. They surround your body, they surround that entire hip girdle, and those muscles are fired far more than you would ever think. And so this is part of our workout that we all need to pay particular attention to. We realized this early on, and we realized it first and foremost from a rehab standpoint. We realized that the majority of the referrals that we were getting from physical therapists happened to deal with people that were rehabbing their hips. And we realized quite quickly that physical therapists make a lot of money off of hips. Hey, kudos to them. I'm glad they do. I'm glad they're taking care of that part of the body because most of us aren't. It's not one that I would say is exactly your fault. And the reason I say that is that if you look at the majority of fitness equipment, especially when it comes to lower body, does not deal with hip action. Now, I'll talk about resistance pieces in just a minute, but let's look at something like cardio. This is something we can all understand. Fitness has been around since, as I like to say, Dr. Kenneth Cooper invented it in the 1960s. It's actually been around since before that. But we're talking the Nautilus machines, the really getting into the fitness revolution didn't start until the 60s. And it's been around since that long. And not until 2014 did a mass-produced cardiovascular piece come out and effectively deal with lateral movement. And that's the Octane, the Lateral X. Treadmill, forward and backward. Elliptical, forward and backward. Bike, forward and backward. A row machine, forward and backward. Arc trainer, forward and backward. We can keep going with the Stairmaster, forward and backward, straight up and down. Not a whole lot of hip engagement. Not a whole lot of sideways or lateral movement. Now, that's just in the cardiovascular places. Look at the resistance machines. There are some resistance machines that deal with it, the abduction and adduction machine, as for many years, everybody stated that or thought, especially was popular amongst males, that they thought that this was a woman's machine, that guys weren't supposed to do this. And those were the machines. There's another piece that has been around for years and actually is now starting to be discontinued because people aren't using it. They don't know how to, and that's the four-way hip machine. At Personal Edge, we have at both of our locations in Mobile and Eastern Shore, we have four-way hip machines at both of those locations because, of course, our trainers know how to use them. But because of that, hip work really didn't make it into our natural lexicon of fitness training. And therefore, most of us went without, which is why we end up with injuries like hip flexors or a sort of a hip injury that puts you out of running, it puts you out of fitness in general and can slow you down. Now, why is it so important? Let me touch that real quick. Well, I mentioned the athletic reasons as far as hip strength and why that's so important. But as far as longevity, this is why I'm doing a podcast on this. Incidence of mortality jumped by 2/3 with the first hip fracture. That's true. Incidence of mortality jumped by 2/3 with the first hip fracture. So therefore, basically, you lose your legs, you lose your life. And why is hip strength so important? Well, first and foremost, you can prevent a fall. If you're falling over to the side, you're starting to lean over the side, you can move that leg quick enough out to the side, you can catch yourself. Or move your legs quick enough inside, you can catch yourself. Or if you start to trip on a step because you caught your toe on it and your hip flexor is strong, you can probably pop that leg up real quick and catch yourself. So prevention is the first reason why hip strength is so important. Number 2 is reaction. And actually that could be number 1, but the reaction time you have to catch yourself in a fall deals with hip strength. And it's what I was talking about a minute ago about being able to prevent that, being able to move your leg fast enough to catch yourself. And number 3, if you do fall, which we all do. I don't think there's a year in my life that I haven't fallen. I don't know that anybody has had a 1 year that they've gone without a fall. We're going to fall. Well, the number 3 reason is protection. Your muscles are there to protect the bone in many ways. For prevention, it's also there to protect it through reaction, but it's also there to cushion a landing so that the bone doesn't take the brunt of the force. So keeping those hips strong becomes extremely important as far as longevity is concerned. Well, let me go real quickly. I'm going to get to a finish on this and tell you some things that you can do as far as keeping your hips strong. Now, I'm going to do this through a podcast since it's kind of difficult to give you visual cues. So if you're interested in any more help with this, please reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. You can also contact me via our website, which is personaledgefitness.com, Facebook page, which is Personal Edge Fitness, or call us at one of our 2 locations. We would be more than glad to sit down and design a hip strengthening program for you. It can be simply, very easily added to any fitness program. First and foremost is the 4-way hip. Now, the 4-way hip machine, this is a rather monstrous machine. If you're familiar with it and you've used it before, I'm going to encourage you, hey, go make it part of your weekly routine. Make sure you're getting on the 4-way hip and you're going through all 4 different motions. If you're not familiar with it, it can be extremely intimidating and very difficult. I know plenty of trainers or people that call themselves trainers that have no idea how to use this machine correctly. So I highly, 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 highly recommend that you contact a professional that really does know how to use that machine. I would say a professional that has at least a degree in the field, of course, anybody on our staff, but also a physical therapist. Ask them to show you how to effectively use a 4-way hip machine. I would not recommend going and just jumping on it, reading the instructions, and trying to do it yourself, because you can seriously hurt yourself on that machine. It's a fantastic machine. The second way I'm going to talk about is band exercises, and I'm going to call them the Lindsay band exercises. The reason I say this is that we have a fantastic director that's been with us for 8 years now. Her name is Lindsay Smith, and Lindsay uses these band exercises ad nauseum. She uses them with herself. She uses them with a lot of clients, and she's done rehab work with this. She's done athletic work with this. It's fantastic. This is a simple loop band that you put on like a pair of pants, and you pull it up to basically to your top part of your thigh or around your thigh, above the knee, below the hip. And you're actually doing like a square dance. You step to the right, you step forward, you step to the left, you step backward. And it's that simple. It's just a simple little dance step. And she is, the reason I call them the Lindsay band exercises is because she uses them extremely effectively. Not only for herself, but also for many of her clients. And if you have questions about that, hey, contact her at 251-341-0927. Lindsay will be more than glad to show you that simple hip exercises. So another way is using leg weights. Now, this is something I use a lot with my home clients. And I use simple leg weights, putting them around their ankles, and we can go through a entire range of motion with the hips by using those leg weights, driving your knee straight up, kicking your leg straight back, doing an abduction kick out to the side, and actually crossing your leg over across the other leg to get that inner thigh movement. But leg weights are another fantastic way. And again, if you need some help with that, contact me. That happens to be my favorite way of working hips, especially if you don't have access to a 4-way hip machine. Another way is through agility. Now, I've used these before working with athletes, but I have some fantastic exercise specialists on staff that just love doing this to the point that they are experts at using agility work to work hips. Now, I'll bring up Charlie Merlot on this. In fact, he recently went to a conference where he picked up some new ideas and just is overjoyed about working people's explosiveness, increasing their speed, and increasing the length of their stride. But also, he's working on a lot of athletes' verticals by working on their hips. And he uses box drills and ladder work and cone drills and all kinds of different agility type drills to work on building that hip strength. Another way you can do it is if you have access to a pool, hey, using that water resistance. You've seen this done before with good aquatics aerobic classes where they're holding onto the side and they're doing leg kicks. Leg kick out to the side, leg kick backward, driving the knee straight up, crossing the leg over in front of them, much like we do with leg weights. But there's 4 different ways of attacking the hips through resistance training. And of course, another way that does some hip work, now it's limited, but some hip work is what I mentioned earlier, the Lateral X machine. And that is the Octane Lateral X machine. It's an elliptical machine that actually goes sideways also. Highly, highly recommend it. When we opened our facility in 2015, our larger facility, we added 8 different ways of addressing hips. That's how important it is. There's not a single client of mine that I don't do some type of hip work. And if you're not doing hip work, I promise you're really limiting yourself and you're missing out on what could be your competitive edge. If you have any questions about this or any other of our topics, please contact me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. And also that's our website and our Facebook page, Personal Edge Fitness. Or you're welcome to call me at either one of our locations. I'd be glad to address that with you. Now, coming up next week, I'm proud to say is going to be my 100th podcast. And for those of you that are fans of the show, thank you so much for staying out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate the feedback and comments that I've gotten about the show. And I'm going to be, of course, talking about my favorite subject on the 100th. And that, of course, the LOA, the live aging. We're going to get a little deeper into that. So thank you so much for listening today. And I hope you tune in next week. Do like and share this program so other people can enjoy the Personal Edge Fitness podcast. I hope you guys are out there seeking your level of wellness, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.